Thank you, Mr. Chair. My amendment is pretty simple. This would cut back on the spending for the office of the NIH director by more than $160 million to return us back to the fiscal year 19 funding level. This amendment ensures appropriate accountability for the NIH's recent failures while also advancing the urgent need for better fiscal responsibility of the House. When Republicans took over the majority, we promised to rein in inflation and governmental spending. We must do more than talk and start to act. The NIH resoundingly failed to do its due diligence to prevent gain-of-function research at Chinese labs, and this failure was fundamental to the existence of the virus that caused the pandemic. To date, there has been absolutely no accountability for these failures and others, and Congress would be failing its duty to ensure accountability by doing nothing and continuing this irresponsible funding to the NIH. We must stop Fauci's experimental process, start holding accountability, get research into finding out exactly what the leading cause was, and make sure that we have the necessary prevention. With that, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I claim the time in opposition.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
This amendment would cut funding by $160 million to the Office of the Director of the National Institutes of Health. During the time that I had the opportunity, for 4 years that I served as chair of this subcommittee, we increased funding for NIH research by $8.4 billion, an increase of 21% above the 2019 level. And I might add something I'm really extremely proud of. As chair, and with Ranking Member Cole, we agreed on a bipartisan basis for the increases to the NIH. And I, again, feel very, very proud of the role I was able to play with my colleague in providing additional funding for life-saving research at the NIH, including research to develop cures or treatments for cancer, for Alzheimer's, ALS, diabetes, or the funding to develop a universal flu vaccine, or funding to ensure that women are represented in clinical trials. This amendment would undermine the progress that we made on a bipartisan basis over the last 4 years. And I urge my colleagues to please oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I appreciate the gentle lady for her acknowledgement that we have increased spending by $8.4 billion, of which some of that funding led to additional trillions of dollars in spending and thousands of lives lost as we funded things like the gain of function under Fauci, which led to the spread of COVID. Now, when you talk about the cut of $160 million, the only response that I can think of is, you're welcome. You're welcome to the American people for us saving money and for us actually doing our job to be fiscally responsible once again. You're welcome that we won't allow continuation of funding for gain of function that would lead to another pandemic as we saw across the world. And you're welcome that we are actually, in the Republican Party as the majority, taking a stand to stop the out-of-control and runaway spending that has been irresponsible and driving generations and generations into future debt. Mr. Chair, this is pretty simple. Without that funding, there probably would have been no pandemic. But unless we're going to get accountability and do the necessary research, I cannot continue to sponsor Fauci and NIH and their efforts to go ahead and spread and lead to another COVID. With that, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I don't know if the gentleman knows this, and at another point, I will extol the virtues of Dr. Anthony Fauci and his scientific background and experience and what he has done to resolve issues of disease and cure in the United States of America and overseas. Maybe the gentleman doesn't know, but Dr. Fauci is no longer at the NIH, and it's unbelievably stunning to me that we're listening to someone talk about how COVID came out of the NIH. What happened to all your theories of other theories? This is really a conspiracy theory that we are generating here. For that reason, and probably for many, many other reasons, that have no basis in science or, quite frankly, in reality, I continue to oppose this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I always love how with the left and our colleagues on the left, they refer to every conspiracy as a conspiracy until it's found to be factual, which is 99% of the time. I'm also aware that Mr. Fauci is no longer there, and we are very thankful for that. However, his accountability on what he had done with helping to fund gain of function, which was actually something that led to the spread in the Wuhan virus, which was also in a partnership with China, is something that still needs accountability research and the necessary review within Congress. I am aware as well that we are continuing to spend at emergency COVID levels, and we need to get back to where we were before. This is simple mathematics. If emergency level spending is meant to be only during a time of emergency, then why do we continue to make that the new benchmark of spending moving forward? The whole point is that we would bring it back to the pre-COVID spending levels, which is what the American people are looking at, for us to be able to stop the irresponsible spending and actually get to what the root cause is, which is the U.S. Congress. So I hate to say it in this way, but the bottom line is that I will not continue to fund these types of things, and I urge my colleagues to support me in this. With that, I yield.